For the longest time, I secretly wanted more. I often found myself shrinking to fit in, settling for what was comfortable, and even selling myself short. Once I finally accepted that we deserve success and we are blessed with the power to achieve it, I stopped playing small. I'm serious about building a life I love, and you should be too. I'm Denise Taylor of DeniseTaylor.live, and welcome to Life, Love, and the Pursuit of Happiness. I help women prioritize themselves, their success, and their happiness. Let's meet this week's achiever whose story will inspire you to push past your fears and soar. Well, hello, it's Denise Taylor. I'm so excited to have you join me here on this week's episode of Life, Love, and the Pursuit of Happiness. I am always elated to have you hear my voice because this platform was designed with you in mind. I want to always encourage you to build a life that you love without apology. I want you to know that God didn't give you a spirit of fear. He gave you power, and it is on us to embrace our power and go. We can do, be, have, and achieve anything we want when we embrace our power. Now, when I look back over my life and I think about the success that I've had personally, professionally, and otherwise, there are 5 key things that ring out. I call those the success superpowers. Number 1 is see yourself successful. We must see ourselves doing, being, having, and achieving those things that our heart desires. Because when we think it, we become it. Number 2 is shake off fear. Fear is nothing more than false evidence appearing real. And so when it appears, we need to declare that it's not real and shake it off. No matter how much of a grip it has, we have to believe and shake off fear. Number 3 is do the work. We have to do the work. We can't sidestep that. We learn in the process of doing, and even more, God said that He will bless the work of our hands. Number 4 is take care of you. The mantle of responsibility that comes along with pursuing the greatness that is on your life requires you to be fit for the journey. So that means you need to be fit. And I don't just mean physically so. I mean, every aspect of you needs a wellness plan. How are you going to make better, make well that characteristic or facet of yourself, be it financially, spiritually, personally, professionally, as well as physically? There are so many dimensions to you. Make sure you have a plan for keeping all aspects of yourself well. And finally, number 5 is hold fast to your faith. You cannot shake off your confidence. You cannot give it up. You have to hold fast. The Bible says that the prize is going to come to those who press. We cannot get weary in well doing. We have to stick with the press because often we're so close when we think about giving up. So don't give up. Hold fast to your faith. Now, you can take those 5 superpowers and apply them to any area of your life. Today's achiever is someone that will indeed bless your life. I am so excited to welcome to the podcast Dr. Alicia Montgomery. She is the executive director for the Center for Powerful Public Schools. Dr. Alicia is the first generation college student graduate in her family who has also gone on to receive a doctorate degree. Most of her experience has been in education, varied at all the different levels, and she has all the credentials that makes her a success. But what I really anchor on here is the dedication and support that she has for the advancement of leaders, especially leaders of color. Dr. Alicia has a special emphasis on imposter syndrome, which is what we're going to talk about today. This episode is going to give you strategies and techniques to overcome the limiting beliefs that come along with imposter syndrome. I get to share a little bit about my story and how I know Dr. Alicia. She's my cousin, but even more than that, she is my person. She's in my inner circle and someone that I rely upon to feed and inspire me. So without further ado, let me let you in on someone that I lean on when I need encouragement. You're going to be blessed. So imagine the moment when you're on vacation with some beautiful people that you love, and you're having a conversation about the things that you're aspiring to do. You're having a conversation about your hopes and dreams. And then in one moment, you shift and you begin talking about that you're a little worried whether or not you will appear as a fraud, or that you have fear of being called out as being incompetent, or that you may have this thought that other people may be smarter than you or work harder than you. You hit this zone of being self-critical. That is where I found myself when I was on vacation with the lovely Alicia Montgomery nearly a year ago. And in that moment, she took the time to arrest those thoughts and tell me, you are suffering from imposter syndrome. And in that moment, I thought to myself, what is she talking about? Because I was not as learned and exposed to imposter syndrome. And so we spent the next couple of days with Alicia educating me and helping me to understand. And what she didn't realize in that moment is she was becoming my person. She was becoming my person. She is the person that I can call when I have those moments of feeling insecure, when I am being self-critical. She is the person I can call when I find myself comparing myself or feeling inadequate for whatever the reason being. And so when I thought about having a conversation around imposter syndrome, just as she sniffed that out with me and was able to help steer me on the right path, I knew I needed to bring Alicia to Life, Love, and the Pursuit of Happiness so that she could share more from her experience, from her training, from her journey about imposter syndrome, because I know it's going to help us. And so without further ado, it's my earnest pleasure to introduce to Life, Love, and the Pursuit of Happiness and welcome my beautiful cousin, Alicia Montgomery, to the podcast. So if you don't mind, please introduce yourself, dear.
Well, thank you so much, my love. I am Dr. Alicia Montgomery. I am currently the Executive Director of Center for Powerful Public Schools, but I am a lifelong learner and educator and have really dedicated myself to leading and being a builder of leaders my whole life. So I'm excited to be here and chat with you today.
Absolutely. And so in that moment when we were having fun in the sun and we were just having casual conversation, you did exactly what you just said. You took a moment to educate a leader, and that leader was me. And so when I realized how the simple conversations that we had were so straightforward, I wanted to make sure I lifted your voice so that others who found themselves sometimes falling into those mental traps could understand how to work themselves out and how to identify it. So I think one of the best places for us to start, just like you had to start with me, is defining imposter syndrome and why do people identify with it?
So, imposter syndrome is this persistent inability to believe that your success is deserved and that you have legitimately achieved your success as a result of your own efforts or your own skills. Um, People who suffer from imposter syndrome often feel anxiety around success decisions whether they should apply for a job or raise their hand to lead a project or lead a company. And so it's a big issue, and sometimes it can really debilitate us.
Yeah.
So it's important for us to understand it.
You know, what was interesting is when you helped me navigate the course of what you started to sense in some of my conversation and some of my words, what I was actually wrestling with is the platform that we're sitting on now and some of the things that I am showing up doing. And so it's not something that's for the weak at heart, because I wouldn't describe myself as that in any way. It's something that typically seems to be around high achievers. It's something that seems to plague those who had a overcoming kind of experience or something that makes them feel a little bit uncertain or odd man out. Tell us, what is that element that seems to plague high achievers like myself when you saw what I was dealing with?
Well, there's a couple of studies. I'm going to get a little geeky on you here, but there are a couple of studies that come to mind. And one is the first study done by Dr. Pauline Clance and Dr. Suzanne Imez at Georgia State University back in 1978. They realized that this was happening to high achieving women, and they decided to do a study. And that's when they learned that high achieving women are suffering from this, and therefore are having some issues around, believing that they truly deserve the accolades that they're getting. Now, this is coupled with this study by the Dunning and Kruger in 1999, who did another study around people who aren't very skillful but yet are very successful. And what they learned is that there's this because they don't understand what it takes to be successful, they actually overshoot and overstate their abilities and overstate what they're able to do. That's how you see people like President Trump being successful, right? Because of their ability to really sell their belief in who they are and what they can do, when in actuality, they're really not as successful. In people like high achieving women or high achieving folks, it's the exact opposite. You really actually understand how much work it takes to be successful. And because of that, you sometimes overstate the amount of work necessary. And then therefore you never meet those expectations, right? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of that effect of, you knowing how much it takes to be successful. And of course, with Black tax, if you're African American, and different things that we add on for women and for men, and depending on your culture, and those kinds of things also add to that. So it's very much prevalent among high achievers for that reason.
Yeah. And, it was interesting when you made the comment to me, because I wasn't sure how to take it, right? It sounds like it's something that plagues you, when in fact, it's a little bit of something that you've trained yourself to do. And it almost feels like a protective mechanism to kind of shield you from failure should it occur, give you reasons to state up front, give you this out, if you will, if we could say it's that. And I guess I don't really understand, or if there's something from the studies that you have had a chance to spend some time with, as to why we acquiesce that way, right? Why are these characteristics or features really showing up in the type of people that they do?
Well, so first, some of the characteristics are, you feel like failure is not an option because you can't fail. If you fail, that means that's who you are. Failure defines you. You feel like failure defines you. Mm-hmm. You might feel like you're fake. You might feel like you're lucky. I'm just lucky to be here. Mm-hmm. You might feel like it's no big deal. It's just a little something. Or you always are like, I could have done better. This was just okay. I could have done better. Mm-hmm. And so when we have those feelings, we actually get in a cycle. So there's actually a cycle that you go through in which you either have a decision or a project, and then you feel some anxiety, some self-doubt, or some worry that causes you either to procrastinate, so you don't do it at all, or it makes you over prepare. So you're just completely over preparing and over excelling, as a lot of people, overachievers, as we say, right? And then you're either going to accomplish it, and then you're going to feel relief if you do, or you're going to ignore it and push away any positive feedback that you've gotten and just feel like I was just lucky. I really didn't deserve it. And it's a cycle. Mm-hmm. And it's until you realize it's a cycle, it won't be broken. And so the reason I got involved or even started to look at it was in pursuing my doctoral degree. I would go through this cycle, and it took me going through this cycle over and over again for me to go, oh, wait a minute, this is a cycle. And what I ended up doing was procrastinating. It took me several years to write my dissertation because of procrastination. And this fear of, well, what if I'm not successful? What if, I don't get good feedback from my committee? And all these what ifs that were just freezing me, right? And not allowing me to push forward. This resulted in me literally not writing for months, sometimes not writing for months. And then when I didn't want to turn it in. Or I would stop and start and stop and start. And it wasn't until I just kept pushing myself to push through and see the good in feedback, because also feedback also can like really just reiterate how horrible you are or how horrible you believe you are. When it's just really just feedback, you're reading so much more into it. So it is a cycle, and it's you realizing you're in that cycle that allows you to break from it. And there's some other strategies that we can talk about as well.
Okay. And so you shared a little bit about how you recognize that within yourself and how you were able to work through it. I think one of the things that kind of stuck out to me is as I began researching it more, it's kind of funny. Once you hear about something, then it keeps showing up, right? Like you never heard about something. And then when someone brings it to your attention, then it seemed like I just kept hearing more and more and more about imposter syndrome. But one of the things that I hear referenced a lot is limiting beliefs, right? And what are limiting beliefs and how do they become factors in this whole syndrome?
Sometimes limiting beliefs start at childhood. Sometimes it's around labels you receive as a child. So you might receive a label as a wild child. You can't settle down for anything. You're going to be wild your whole life. Those kinds of labels. Or bless your heart, you try so hard, but you'll never be able to do that. You're clumsy, you're these kinds of labels. Like clumsy literally has me not being able to ride a bike to this day. There are certain labels we receive as a child that lives with us and stays with us through adulthood, and those labels are limiting. Another limit are societal labels. Well, you're African American female, you can't do this, you can't do that. You're a Black male, you can't do this, you can't do that. You're a white female. There are societal labels that place these boundaries on us that we don't want to break out of. Cultural ones as well. If you're a Christian woman, you got to stay at home, raise the kids. These are some societal labels that people put on us. Some things that I like to call social contracts. So sometimes there are social contracts around how we're supposed to behave, how much success we're supposed to experience in life, what expectations for success and achievement we may have. People that look like us that aren't in roles that we want to be in, those kinds of things are some of the things that really limit us in our thinking around what we can achieve and how successful we can be in life.
Wow. I would say many of our childhood experiences are peppered with a lot of that, right? And a lot of that, whether it's something that started in the home, unfortunately, or something that was impacted in the school or amongst friends. It's like we get exposed to those different things. How do we wash that, right? Like, how do we get it clean? How do we turn those messages around so that we can begin to set ourselves on a different course? So talking about some of those strategies that you mentioned would be available, how do we begin to like rechart that course when it's so ingrained in us, right? Because it's something that was said to you as a kid. It's something that took root and it just continued to blossom. And now you find yourself as an adult and you can be successful and still struggle with this. So how do we wash it? How do we make it clean?
When you get to a crossroad, when you're driving, you have to decide whether to turn right or turn left or go straight. And so whenever you're at a crossroad, you have to ask yourself, which direction do you want to go? And if the direction you're choosing because you're limiting yourself or because you're pushing yourself. And if you feel like you're limiting yourself, then you have to think about why that is. And then, and it's just being cognizant and being thoughtful about your decisions that you're making for yourself, that you're making on a project, that you're making with your team. These kinds of decisions, once you start to think about them and you really start to be cognizant, you'll pause yourself. It's kind of like we talk about, being conscious of the biases you have, right? Once you become conscious, then you start asking yourself these questions all the time. And then really noticing the behaviors. And so some of the behaviors are, you're a perfectionist. You can't get anything out until it's absolutely perfect. It has to be 1000% perfect, no mistakes whatsoever. And so sometimes these folks take a long time to get a project done because it absolutely has to be perfect. Or you feel like you have to be the only one doing it. You have to do everything yourself. No one else can do it, because if someone else does it and they're on your team and it doesn't come out right, it looks bad on you. Or you feel like you're Superwoman and you can do everything and all things perfectly and well. Like you're a master of all. Or, you're a natural genius. And so sometimes if things are hard, that's when you feel like you can't do it, right? Like if something is hard, then you obviously don't have the skills. I obviously can't do that because it's hard. Because you're naturally a genius or you're naturally smart, things come easier to you. And when things are hard, you want to back away and pull away. So it's recognizing some of those behaviors that'll allow you to think about, oh, why am I doing everything? Why am I the only one that can do this? I have no one else on my team that can do this work. Or why is it I have to spend 4 or 5 hours reviewing this 1-page document before I can, release it to someone? So it's really recognizing some of those behaviors and then pausing.
I really love the crossroads analogy. The one I would add to it is the one I have with you. And I think that is when I can sense myself starting to spiral, if I can say that, having a safe place to go with it with someone who can help you course correct. For me to be able to say, oh my God, I'm all in my head. Like, I can sense it now, like when it's coming. And, it's usually at times when I feel like something is really bigger than me and what I'm trying to do and accomplish, and really just trying to understand, am I the right person for this? Do I have the experience? Do I have the chops for it? But having now someone that I can go to that I know understands what this is to help me course correct, I think it's absolutely a powerful outlet, that hopefully people can find their person like I have you. Now, I will tell you this, when you first said it to me, I'm like, is she diagnosing me? Like, is she telling me I have a mental illness? So help us understand, right? Because I didn't know if you was putting a label on me. Like, I didn't know what was going on in the moment. And so help us understand how to accept this, how to understand it. Is it an illness? Is it just a form of anxiety? Exactly what it is from that perspective.
It's not a mental illness. It's not anything that people should be worried about, except that it's naturally occurring in many folks, in particular people of color and women. It happens more often in those populations. One is because we're gaslighted so often, right? Like we're absolutely told we don't know anything. We're absolutely overlooked in a meeting, right? We can say one thing and somebody else say it and it's brilliant. Those kinds of gaslighting practices also add to that. So it's not something people should be ashamed of or feel like they have to deny, but understand those thoughts happen. And I think we all suffer from it at some point in or another. It's just, to what degree do we allow it to impact our work and what we do? So it's kind of like bias. People are talking a lot about having a diversity and inclusion and all of that in their workplaces. And so people are starting to talk about implicit bias. We all have it. It's not a negative thing. It's not a bad thing. We all have it. It's just, how do we deal with it? And how do we have behaviors that will combat it? and to actually try to help us move forward.
Mhm.
So I don't want people to feel like, oh my God, I have imposter syndrome. That's not like what we want to be feeling. What we want to say is, I have at times thoughts of being an imposter, but I have some tools that I can use to help me think through that and get past that. Or I have a person that I can call to talk through it. So that's really important. And so one of the things I would suggest to people is that it starts with acknowledging what you are good at, and whatever you need to do that. You can make a list of the things you're good at. You can keep that list where you can see it. You can frame it. You can, post it all around your house or whatever. You can ask your friends and family what you're good at. I remember one time I was thinking about applying for assistant superintendent job. And I was so afraid to ask, but I asked one of my best friends, I said, why would I be a good assistant superintendent? Why do I even think I could do that work? And she went on to tell me all the reasons why I could do the work. And I was like, oh, okay, that helped me feel better about me doing that. So sometimes asking your friends, don't be afraid to ask, because I was a little afraid to ask.
Yeah, and I think it's important to make sure you got a good tribe, right? Because you definitely don't want someone who's going to take that moment and not help you get refocused in the right way.
And that's actually another strategy, is to also make sure that you don't have people around you all the time that are giving you negative feedback, but giving you honest or constructive feedback that you can use to improve or get better. And those folks that gave you the childhood label, sometimes that's your family. And sometimes it means you're not spending as much time with those people as you might normally, because you don't want to be around that, especially when you're at a crossroads. When you're thinking about like going to the next level or moving forward, that's absolutely not the time to be around all your family that's going to tell you, oh, you this, and remind you of all of your ills and all of the things that you don't possess.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Now, have you ever been exposed to any cases or people where the limiting beliefs have morphed into self-sabotaging behaviors?
Well, yes. And we do it in women, we do it all the time in relationships, right? We don't deserve that prize man. So when he comes, sometimes we sabotage and we put in barriers that we shouldn't have. And you are the expert on that. So you definitely could speak to that if you think about it. And I think that we do that in our jobs, we do that at work. And we set ourselves up for failure. Like a procrastinator who is dealing with imposter syndrome is someone that's setting themselves up for failure, right? We're definitely not setting ourselves up for great success because we're not preparing at all. A procrastinator doesn't prepare at all. They really wait till the last minute. So they don't have really a lot of time to make it real quality. And so therefore you're kind of setting yourself up, maybe not for a failure because you're probably pretty bright and pretty competent, but you are not setting yourself up to be as successful as you could be. So absolutely, there are times when that happens. I know I've done it myself, and I think I know lots of people who've done that.
Yeah. So do it feels like there could be the opportunity for there to be an element where, I guess the way I'm thinking about it is, how do you frame your day, right? Like, how do you begin? How do you begin to set yourself on the right course so that you can make sure that you are framing the space, framing it in for yourself? Do you have any kind of strategies that you do to kind of help you bring things into perspective that kind of shoots you out of the gate the right way?
Well, sometimes it's not as much as shooting yourself out of the gate, because I feel like most of us are accomplishers, right? We get a lot done. But what I noticed is I write my to-do list and I don't get the things done on my to-do list that I set out to do. So I was feeling very defeated every day. So what I decided to do is at the end of the day, instead of looking at my list and looking at the things I didn't get done, to write down the things I did get done. What are the conversations I had? What are the things that were successful today? And really ending the day with celebrating the accomplishments that you had, because that's the part that we are not that great at, is celebrating our accomplishments. So that's the part, is ending your day with celebrating what you achieved and what you were able to accomplish. And that has helped me a lot. That has helped me not have as much guilt when I go home. It's helped me sleep better at night. It has helped me on so many levels to just think about the accomplishments of that day. And what I was successful
Wow,
at.
that's incredible, because, I would think that even allows you to put yourself in a good place to rest well, right? Because if you are ending your day focused on what you accomplished versus what you didn't get done, your mindset is in a completely different place that's far more peaceful than the beating yourself across the head because of what didn't get checked off the list. So that feels very, very powerful to me.
It's almost like a gratefulness journal. You know how people have like their grateful journals or whatever. This is similar, except that it's just really celebrating what you did. It's really, and it puts a whole different lens on it. Another thing that people can do is stop asking everyone for advice. And this sounds counterintuitive, right? Because the problem, what happens is, we don't trust our own thoughts and our own decisions. And so we go to someone else, right, to validate our thoughts. And I would encourage people to flesh out their whole thought, flesh out their whole idea as far as they can take it before asking anyone for advice. One, the person you ask for advice, make sure there's someone you trust. That's someone, not because they have positional power over you, but someone you trust because you know that they're going to have your best interest at heart. Because I've done that. I share my idea, and the person I shared it with, I really admired as a professional. I mean, he's like this big person at a university, and he took my idea and ran with it. And I was like, oh my gosh, what just happened here? And next thing you know, somebody else is doing your work. So be careful about doing those kinds of things. The other thing I encourage people to do is be a spectator of your thoughts. Don't be so engaging with your thoughts. Be the audience, and sometimes you just have to let them walk by, let those thoughts go through in one ear and out the other, as they say. But oftentimes, instead of doing that, we sit them down, we have a cup of coffee with them, and we want to chat about how we might not be ready for this next move, or this next position we want to apply for, or whatever. Don't entertain those thoughts. And not all thoughts deserve your attention. So be very careful of that. The enemy is alive and will seek to kill and destroy. So let's just really stay positive and be careful about the thoughts that we want to talk about and we want to entertain.
Oh my God. All of that is really excellent advice. And I think others can see now why I value the relationship that I get to have with you, why I value having you in the inner circle for me as someone I can rely upon to help give me guidance and just really give me steering perspective. And I think what makes it safe, right? When you were just talking, what makes it safe is I have an earnest belief that you have my best interest at heart, which means that when I share, you are always going to feed into me from that place. And so as people are looking for who to lock arms with, they want to make sure they're locking arms with someone who genuinely cares about them, not their ideas, not their wealth, not their title, but cares about them as a person, because that type of person is going to be able to give you the good. They're going to be able to be ironed for you to help you sharpen. They're going to be able to be qualifying for you as you're trying to vet through different things. But I love all the advice you gave, but I am so eternally thankful that you are in my in my tribe, if I could say it that way.
Well, I'm glad to be in your tribe. And I like to be that in that tribe for people in general, because I feel like there's so many of us who are struggling, and I like to have a tribe too. And I'm so glad that you're a part of my tribe to talk to as well.
Mm-hmm.
But people shouldn't be afraid of feedback. Oftentimes we're really afraid of evaluations, surveys, and feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And we should not be fearful of those. Go into those, create them yourselves, get some feedback for yourself. You'll be surprised at how fantastic you are.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be surprised at how fantastic people think you are, believe that you are.
Mm-hmm.
Another one is sometimes we have a lot of self-doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to encourage people to do is to question your knowledge, but not you and who you are.
Yeah.
Read some research, ask for help, but don't ever question yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Only question your knowledge.
You know, what's interesting, and it's something that I started to do recently, and I don't know if it's because I could sense where I was starting those spiraling behaviors, is I would always say to myself, I say to my team, I say to those who I lead, take it personal last. Don't take it personal, right? Like find 100 other ways to take it before you take it personal, because when we take it in and we take it personal, then we have to wrestle with it against all of the history, against all of the limiting beliefs. And then that is when feedback feels disingenuous. That's when it feels, penetrating, when really it is something that we can all grow and learn from. And so that is something that I started to do. And I find myself saying more and more, because a lot of times we find ourselves just taking it personal and then we can't get past it.
Yes. Absolutely. So another strategy would be to memorialize positive feedback. We all get it. We all get the note that says you've been so amazing and so helpful. And I've seen you posting some for yourself. Mm-hmm. That's really important to do. And I hope people don't ever see that as boastful, because we really need that, to have that in our lives, and we need to have it facing outward and not always inward. We need to, I tell people, if you need to make a scrapbook, if you need to make a special file, take pictures. Maybe you take pictures and you have a whole little file of positive affirmations in your phone that you can look at, but that you really have them available to you, so that when you are feeling like you're not so this or so that, you can open up that book or open up those pictures and really take a look at some of the feedback you've gotten. And I know that has to be very affirming for you and very validating for you. And we all need that sometimes. So I would encourage people to do that. Mm-hmm. Watch who you hang around. I will say that again. Having friends and colleagues that are affirming is so crucial. Mm-hmm. If someone's not straightening your crown, then please move away, because that is not where you want to be. And people who are growth minded, and meet with them regularly. Don't let them be the once a year kind of person. Let them be the ones you hang. See, we spend Sundays with the family that's perpetuating our childhood labels. Every week we with those people. Well, what we should be flipping that, right? We should be spending our Sundays with people who are affirming and growth minded, and really celebrating us. And not so much, and be okay with that. Like, really allow ourselves to do that. Mm-hmm. That's really important. And then I think finally, we have to find a person like you and I have, that we can say, I'm going to work on this. Mm-hmm. And if you ever hear me slipping, I want you to call me on it. Mm-hmm. I want you to ask me to read an affirmation, like, point me back to these strategies that I need to use in order for me to move past it. Mm-hmm. Shake me out of the cycle.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God. These strategies are amazing. the ones that you've shared. I'm sure that they're going to be tremendously impactful. Now, is there something around imposter syndrome that I didn't ask that you want to make sure gets shared?
I think I've covered pretty much everything. Just remember it is a cycle. You can get in a vicious cycle.
Okay.
And remind yourself when you see yourself in that cycle. And you get in the cycle at crossroads. It's usually during crossroads that you get in this cycle, and just remind yourself that the decision you're making, don't make it out of fear, don't make it out of, all of those behaviors that we kind of have gotten ourselves used to having, that we break ourselves out of that. But I think I've covered, pretty much most of the things that would help people to think about. Oh, there's one more thing to remember, that you don't have to have all the answers. One of the things that we suffer from, if you're suffering from imposter syndrome, is this belief that you have to have all the answers, or appear like you know what you're talking about all the time. And honestly, admitting when you don't know something is the best cure. Just saying, I don't know, but I'll get back to you. Asking someone for help, because pretending actually enhances the imposter syndrome. So while you're thinking you are coming across as someone who knows everything to everyone else, and not being an imposter, it's actually increasing your feelings of being an imposter. So try not to do that. Admit when you don't know something. I will Google something in mid conversation. Hold on, let me look it up. Let me look that up. And then I'll check myself. Now, did I say that? Let me check and make sure I was right about that. And then if I wasn't right, I was like, you know what? I was wrong. Hold on, that was wrong. Let me fix that. So really, just be willing to admit when you don't have all the answers, and it's okay not to have all the answers.
That's a good one to close out on. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, because I know you do speaking, you do writing, you do interviews, you do all of those great things, your experience far exceeds what we're talking about today. But I honed in here because that's one of the connection points that we made. How can they reach you?
You can reach me by phone, which is 916-276-1130, or you can reach me by email, amled, AMLED @AOL.com.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, my dear cousin. God has blessed you to be a part of my life. Blessed you.
Yes, absolutely. You said it right. You said it right. You said it right.
And I just treasure so much about you. I treasure everything that you mean to me. So here around these parts, I challenge people to build a life they love without apology. And I always close out with what I call the life, love, in pursuit of happiness questions. And they are focused on those key things. So here we go at your chance to wrap us up. So tell me, what's your life wisdom that you would tell your younger self if you could?
Always believe in yourself. Never let fear keep you from doing anything. And no matter what people tell you, you deserve to be in the room.
I love that. I love that. And you've been in some awesome rooms. I'm so impressed by your success. I really, really am. What love wisdom would you tell your younger self if you could?
Love wisdom. Love yourself first. Love yourself first. And then it'll be so much easier to love those around you.
That's awesome. That's a good one. And then finally, what's your happiness wisdom? What would you tell your younger self about happiness if you could?
Happiness begins within. No one else is responsible for your happiness but you. You cannot rely on others or anyone else to make you happy. It has to start within.
That is so awesome. All right, my beautiful, 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 beautiful cousin. Thank you. Thank you for pouring into us today. And I just want to tell you that success looks so good on you.
Thank you, cousin, as well. It does on you. Thank you so much.
So beautiful.
There were so many great nuggets that came from that conversation with Dr. Alicia. There has to be at least one that you can take and apply to your life to turn around any limiting beliefs that you may be having or may be thinking about that is stopping you from moving forward. I want to always encourage you to embrace your power. I want to always encourage you to think about the superpowers that I talked about at the beginning of this episode and how they can really be impactful in your life. We're often challenged with the limiting beliefs that come along with imposter syndrome, but we have power that God gave us. He didn't give us fear. He gave us power. We must embrace it and go. Thank you for tuning in. And for those of you who take the time to rate, review, subscribe, I want to tell you, I greatly appreciate it. If this conversation is one that has blessed you, please, please, please share it. In addition to that, also rate, review if you haven't, because I would love to hear your feedback. Thanks again for being a part of the community and listening to me.
Well, that's it, beautiful. Thank you for tuning in. Don't ever forget that you truly deserve life, love, and all the happiness your heart can hold. Be relentless in building a life you love without apology. I'm Denise Taylor, and you can always find me in our free Facebook community. Life, love, in the pursuit of happiness, easy to find. Now, if you want more information about my success superpowers, as I'm sure you do, download my free Success Superpowers ebook at denisetaylor.live/podcast. And one last thing, always embrace your power and go.